11-hydroxy THC, it's so different and it's so potent that at certain levels in certain people who are predisposed to psychosis, it can trigger it. And so if you eat a large enough of an edible, you actually could turn into the devil. And apparently this is happening.
Ladies and gentlemen, you asked, we answered. He is the founder and president of the Trichome Institute, author of the Interpening and the Art of Science of the Cannabis Sommelier, a level 3 Master Interpener, and may possibly be the most knowledgeable man in cannabis. Ladies and gentlemen, Max Montrose.
Absolute fucking legend, baby. Let's go.
Hey guys, thank you so much for having me. And what an interesting way that we came to find each other. So
you couldn't have said it better. For those of you who somehow wouldn't know, we came across Max from the 710 Labs. What is it called? The Green Room live stream, better known now as the Dumpster Fire live stream. It's kind of interesting that that's how we met. A little bit more background. It's funny. I actually, one of our biggest kind of mentors in our Florida career in our industry, he originally referenced you like 2 years ago to us when we were first becoming bud tenders when we started. And it's so crazy. Like 2 years go by, 3 years go by. Now that dude who it means a lot to us sees that we're doing a podcast with you, and like he sent us questions. Like he's incredibly proud because like he's looked at your research, your projects. He's always gone to you first when he's looking for stuff. And so like this moment for us is kind of just like, thank you again so much for taking the time to come on.
Dare I say this is probably our biggest podcast guest we've ever had for sure, man.
Honestly, yeah, man, this is huge.
Well, thank you guys so much. And thanks for doing the review video that you did. I can't tell you how much fun I had watching that from an audience perspective and watching your analysis, which was quite good. You guys are very good at what you guys do. So first of all, good to meet you. What are your guys' names?
I am Chase, and that is Aaron.
Yeah, we're Couchlock News. A little bit of background. Basically, we started in 2019 when COVID happened. We both were home for COVID from college. We had just gotten our medical cards. We could do more background on that later. And basically, we weren't old enough to officially be in our industry yet in Florida. You have to be 21 to be in the industry. And we were just such passionate little pothead shitheads that we wanted to get into the industry already. We were literally just sitting in our garages on Zoom, smoking weed together. And
it really did start in a garage. Like Aaron used to bring his car in because if he didn't, the garage would echo. So he would have to bring like items into the garage to avoid the echo so we could do a podcast. Like we've unlisted all our first podcasts. Let's just say they weren't the best.
It's good to meet you guys. I appreciate just saying hi to each other and having an introduction because we didn't really have an opportunity to do that in the last podcast. So I'm Max Montrose. Nice to meet you guys. Thanks for having me on. Yes, Trichome Institute. And by the way, I laughed so hard when you guys were like, isn't that a doctor's office?
So that's actually funny because here in St. Pete, Trichome Health Institute is literally my doctor's office as the medical one.
Yeah.
So that's the misconception there. So let's actually jump into this. What were you thinking and feeling during that live stream, like when it first started?
I mean, listen, I've participated in cannabis education in a variety of different ways, really lecturing about this stuff, talking about this stuff, educating, teaching classes, writing courses, policy, legislation, science, activism, for 15 years of my life. Trichome's almost 8 years old now. And I've never had an experience quite like that. And, I don't think it's even fair to compare to anything normal because nothing about that was normal. To me, it's not even, the issue for me is not even the fact that drugs are her brand, because in a lot of ways, drugs are my brand. Like Max Montrose personally, like when you look me up, it's psychedelic adventures around the world, and my experiences trying them both in native and ritualistic ways, and then also exploring them in different ways. And then my business, Trichome, Cannabis. So drugs aren't a problem for me, but I think the amount of disrespect for being that level of intoxicated on those types of substances when you're online, live on a show with other people, it's, I mean, how could that not be a recipe for disaster? And that's not normal. People don't do that. And that's why I wasn't okay since since like the camera turned around. And that's why I couldn't even say hi or say who I was with or show my book or even really get anything out. So I had to bail because you guys, your assessment was right. I cracked. I tried my hardest for longer than I really thought I could. And there was definitely moments where I was like, okay, I'm going to light her up right here online. Like, we're going to do this. And decided, I think we're online. Don't do anything inappropriate. You know what I mean?
What was the tipping point for you? Was it when you finally said, I'm going to go make dinner, or was there something beforehand that was just kind of lingering in your head that you were like, man, I've had enough of this shit?
The tipping point was how bad I felt for the viewers, because I know that people wanted to see like these potentially new species and learn about the research that we're doing and the new trichome varieties that we've been discovering, and all sorts of cool stuff that I am excited to share with your audience today.
Yeah, absolutely, man.
Questions that you guys sent over that the audience asked, literally, that's an amazing list of questions. Typically, you just get like the regular old weed questions.
Dude, our audience is amazing, bro. Like, they literally be having some scientific questions.
But we're going to actually crush a lot of cool stuff. And so I'm not going to blab too much. I really want to get into getting into the weeds about it, because there's some really good stuff to cover that I'm stoked for.
Absolutely.
The breaking point was me really wanting to have a conversation or have a discussion, and then the constant that just not being possible. It just wasn't possible. So at what point do you say, let's just keep doing this thing that's just not working? And I couldn't. So I had to. I don't even know if I made dinner. That was just my excuse. I have to leave right now. So it's like.
Yeah, I was proud that you even made it that far, man. We were so surprised. Like, I remember watching, just being like, this man's patience is beyond mine to the highest degree. Like, I think I would have left within like 5 minutes, and you stayed like 20 minutes, dude.
That was really fun to watch you guys take of that. And apparently the internet appreciates it, because that thing's going around like wildfire. So
yeah, man, to be completely candid, I don't think we ever saw it blowing up to that extent, to be honest with you. You know, we really, and you can see it in the video, we're only looking at it through a Florida medical lens very much. But yeah, I guess the last topic that I have for the 710 thing, unless you want to mention anything, is like, what was the immediate aftermath for you? Like, how did you feel like when you got off the call? Like, was there any discussion between you guys? Like,
good communication is one of my biggest pet peeves in life. And so I don't really like the idea of just moving on or not having some kind of a discussion around, you know, I mean, that was kind of I don't even know what you call that. It was a dumpster fire.
Yeah.
And I mean, what was the aftermath? I mean, it sucked that I canceled a really important event to be on that show. And it sucked that the guys at 710 did a really good job of reaching out, organizing it, and being on schedule. You know, the fact that I set up my plants and got ready, got a little haircut for the show. It was a little, you know, to be honest, it was a little humiliating that that's what happened. And it was really disappointing. So I definitely let them know that, and actually conveyed that to Melissa. Because in my world, after something like that, the way that you heal yourself internally so that you don't have to carry the weight of that known experience that you caused other people to have is to, acknowledge it somehow, some way. I don't know why I kind of expected an apology from her, maybe because I really wanted one because I feel like I deserve one. But to be honest, I wasn't surprised that she didn't email me back at all. But 710 did reach out to me, and they acknowledged that was not the plan. That was obviously not their intention, and I believe that to be true. So,
all right. Well, I think that everything that I wanted to ask about that call is done. Now, I really want to transition into the knowledge.
Got to dive into the meat of the issue and the most important question that you were there that night to answer. And with an uninterrupted platform, does THC percent matter? Why and why not? And why does it not equate to potency?
THC absolutely matters. And the more THC that you have, the more of a THC effect you're going to get out of the plant. What we're trying to explain to people is when you do a lab test for THC, which is traditionally HPLC, there's a lot of issues, first of all, there. The industry still hasn't come up with a full standardization that is shared across all different states. States that are really pretty advanced, like Colorado, even give 15% variance allowance in whatever the lab says the THC is because of how much differentiation there actually is at the lab level. And then at the end of the day, many people who are quite experienced with cannabis, who look at lab tests, smoke the flower, and really understand what they're taking in, commonly have experiences where they are just floored by certain varieties of cannabis that really might not have that much THC in them. And when you ask, well, what's going on? It's because you're smoking over 400 different psychoactive compounds that are all individuals. They're individually psychoactive in and of themselves. And then they create a collective, which is the bouquet, and that's the total chemotype. And so if the answer is like, well, what would be the fairest way to determine THC percentage? This was a question that one of your guys asked actually, which was, is it more fair to test for the terpenes over THC? And the answer for that is no, it's not one or the other. If you have a flower and you want to know how psychoactive it is, you would have to test for all of the psychoactivity that it has simultaneously. And if you just say, oh, well, doesn't the industry do that? And the answer is no, not at all, not even close. Cannabis has 150 cannabinoids, up to 200 terpenes, and then dozens and dozens of all the other psychoactive compounds that equate to the total potency and the psychoactive direction. So THC is not responsible for whether you're going to be high or whether you're going to be stoned, sedative or stimulating. That direction is going to be dictated by the arrangement of the aromatic compounds that are available, and then the THC is going to add to that. And so the THC, and this is one of those funny things. I see young kids on TikTok today and a bunch of my competitors using like one of my favorite analogies. I come up with analogies to teach about cannabis all the time. And this one that I made up, I swear, like over 10 years ago, is the fact that THC is the engine in the car, and the aromatic compounds are going to steer the wheel. But I don't think people even understand at what level the aroma is playing a role. And I don't think people even have an opportunity to understand it because the labs aren't really even testing for it. They are testing for the most dominant terpenes. And that's fair because all the other terpenes aren't really in large quantities to have much of an impact, to be honest. But the canasulfur compounds, which are thiols, like the smell of skunk that we were trying to talk about, that's not going to pop up on a terpene test because the smell of skunk isn't a terpene.
Oh, that's crazy, man. That's that last part where you said it's not going to pop up on a test, like the skunk. I feel like I can't even lie, for the longest time when I originally got into this, I was for sure convinced that the only thing the smell had to do with was the terpenes. Like, I know cannabinoids played a little bit of a factor, but when I first started getting into cannabis, like, I definitely thought that's all that mattered.
I guess my question would be basically, so what is then, is that kind of what you'd be referring to as like what a lot of people commonly refer to as like the entourage effect? It's the overall blend of everything, or would that be something different?
Very much so. And maybe even more so. What I'm talking about is, and I'm going to say this word with legitimacy, full spectrum.
Okay. So,
Talking about the plant's entire spectrum that it has, at which that would be full of its alcohols, esters, phenols, polyphenols, thiols, which are canosulfur compounds, canaflavons, terpenes, flavonoids, cannabinoids. That's a full spectrum. It's a marketing term because it's generally a broad spectrum where they would have some ratio of cannabinoids and some ratio of terpenes, but by no means do I think they have 400 to 500 compounds from the originality of the plant in its true living state available in an extract. Those do exist. They're extremely rare.
So then, to our Florida specific market, and I know it is a little bit different in other states, how would you best suggest then going about buying and choosing your cannabis? In Florida, you really can't smell or see, for the most part, most of the cannabis you're buying before you buy it. I think there's one exception here in Florida where you can smell it. I think Grow Healthy does let you do that, and in some places you can see it beforehand. So how would you suggest going about recommend people go about buying their flower and their medicine here in Florida?
There's a couple things there. One would be that the answer in the way that it would be the perfect world scenario, which is something that Trichome Institute and a bunch of industry friends of ours have been discussing for a very long time. Like, how do you crack this code so that the consumer doesn't have to do it for themselves? So that at the industry level, and maybe even at a regulatory level, cannabis is actually lab tested for actual quality. Like, do your labs look for insects? Do they look for ripeness? Do they look if your herb has been flushed properly or not? Do they look for the types of microbials that affect cannabis versus the ones that are in regulation that generally don't? What would that mean to the consumer if there was an industry process that actually looked at cannabis quality from a consumer consuming it perspective? And then what if the industry could offer you a legitimate potency that included maybe not the entire chemotype, maybe not the full spectrum, but at least enough of the spectrum based on when the plant was harvested, because that has a lot to do with how potent it will still be based on how the aroma structure does evaporate and based on how these independent businesses work that cure. And then most of all, the most important, biggest quagmire in our multi-billion-dollar drug industry, how about offering cannabis to patients and retail consumers where you at least tell them if it's going to be a stimulant or a sedative? And so the idea that cannabis is either indica or sativa is so ridiculous because you're literally trying to convey to the world that out of tens of thousands of domesticated biotypes, there's only one or two effects you could get from them. And that's not true. That's just not true. Cannabis is on a massive spectrum of psychopharmacy. There are varieties of effect types between stimulating and sedative, and sometimes in between those, that is possible to convey to the industry. I'm going to let you say something because I'm ranting hard right now, but then I want to show you some solution possibilities for this.
If it was you, how would you scale? Like, is it possible?
I was actually just talking to, I'll just say, a industry operation in Florida about this. because some of these businesses are coming to terms with the fact that all of their stores are the exact same. If they buy the same flowers from the same producers, and they buy the same edibles from the same producers, and the same concentrates from the same producers, and they're so competitive that their prices are damn near identical, then what's really the difference when you walk in the store between this one or that? Besides, of course, customer service and how good it looks, and all these other things. And truly, it also comes down to bud tender education, because when your bud tenders are really knowledgeable about the products and you have trust there, there's a lot to that. But besides that, getting to your point, what I would do is I would actually have one person at the operation who, when you get the flower in, would actually go through some type of an interpening process, right? And so if you guys haven't seen this updated card,
we can also,
we'll pop it up.
We'll
pop it up for you so you can just talk about it.
So we have this thing called industry terminology, right? Like Indica and Sativa. So we pay homage to that so that it's not really confusing. But there is a methodology that is interpening. It's not just interpreting the terpenes. That's one of the largest aspects. That's going to be one of the largest keys here. But if you actually look at the consistency within the inflorescence, which is the shape of the flowers in multiple different details, and you combine that with its type of pistillate and other plant characteristics, and then where that's perceived on the trigeminal nerve of the human face is not your sense of smell. Smelling is your ability to detect the types of aroma structure that's there. Feeling the sensation of where those active, vibrating, string theory aroma compounds are vibrating in a lower sedative state or a higher stimulating state is a key to the human body of the psychoactive effect. And at the end of the day, you can just load, you can just organize cannabis into being either a sedative or a stimulant in a way that is shown to be true many times over. And then for fun, I'll just show you, because the labs don't look for all of these different qualitative attributes, the person at the point of sale could, or picking up the flower, your highest qualities, the most known aroma structure, the terpenes that are available, and some of the other notable things. And you could literally produce independent reports on the flower that you're selling in a way that you can combine what you get from the lab test, because there are valuable things there, such as pesticides and other stuff like that. But you can also produce a report and convey to your community that we no longer use the term indica or sativa, because these plants aren't those things, and we can explain that. But what they are is, they are, you know, it is a, let's say, a broadleaf marijuana type, you know, leaf structure, aroma, scent perception, aroma type, flower structure, and the generality of how the spectrum of cannabis truly affects people, and particularly based on their independent tolerance as well. There's just easier approaches to saying, yeah, cannabis is this awesome complex plant that's on this big spectrum, and we've got 30 different varieties over here, but we've organized them based on the spectrum between the ones that we know to be the most stimulating and sedative, not just from one guy smoking it and his subjective opinion on that, but an entire process that we've gone through, that we've organized and documented for you to shop for your flower with. Any dispensary that would want to switch their menu from just strain names and indica and sativa to, here's the variety types that we have to offer you, and here's the level of quality that each one is at, and then here's how these drug types generally should affect you based out of 9 out of 10 people, is just a way more intelligent way to go about buying and shopping cannabis flower. But it's an interpening process.
And now a word from our sponsors.
We want to give a huge shout out to Extreme Farming. These guys are the absolute homies. They're some of the most authentic people we've ever worked with and are all about the cannabis culture and community.
They have an insane knowledge on the cultivation side of things and are the most popular hydroponic store in the game right now. We will be having them on the channel soon to spit some knowledge for you guys. Anyways, guys, back to the podcast.
So I noticed in the live stream you were going to go over like the plants and the cannabis plants and the hops and the cross between the two and everything like that. And you kept getting interrupted. Do you want to explain that now and show us now?
Although my plants look way shittier today than they did then, because I just left them in my office. I tossed some water on them, but I was like, I'm just not dealing with it. And I didn't even remove the spider mite infestation on the little one, just to show people how hardcore these little things are. No shame. Spider mites happen, especially when you just leave your plants in the corner and don't take care of them. So good lesson for everyone. But yeah, because I was on with my buddy John Capita, and he's real deal stuff, man. Content director for High Times magazine. I was excited to share with him kind of the newer, cooler stuff in the cannabis scene, which a lot of people don't really even know much about yet. That involves one of my projects. One of them right now, we've got a contract with Texas A&M University, who is currently doing scanning electron microscopy on a variety of different glandular trichomes that we believe are novel, that we discovered. And this is actually like totally crazy because try finding a needle in a haystack. That's easy compared to finding a microscopic gland on cannabis somewhere on planet Earth that people don't know exists. And we taught our interpening students about it. And we put it in the interpening textbook, and it's in the course. And our students actually found these trichomes microscopically on cannabis plants that they were evaluating. So it's due to them that we've got that going on. But this other project is, again, this guy doesn't look as pretty as good. Let me see if I can.
I don't think you know how crazy it is, even just from a Florida perspective, just to see a plant in a house so casually like that.
Yeah, when we originally, I don't know if you remember, we saw your plants behind you. We were like, there's no way this dude's in Florida.
Yeah.
You should see what's hanging in the garage. Jesus. This is nothing. This is just like,
bro, I love the way you phrased it on the live stream. You got a bit of an extensive cactus situation going on.
Yeah, we have like 300 or 400 psychedelic cacti in our greenhouse. So this guy is begging to be taken down. I actually, the reason why I didn't kill this plant a week or two ago when I should have is because I was waiting to show you guys, because you said you wanted to see. This probably doesn't look typical or regular. And again, this sucks that the leaves are in such a dull position as they are. What I was trying to explain when I was suggesting that this might look like a duck's foot, in my interpening book, we cover all the varieties of cannabis that are like totally bizarre that people don't really know about, and we cover some of their history. And one of those was duck's foot. And it's called duck's foot because it looks like, it has a duck's foot. So this phenotypically, right, phenotype, what it looks like from the exterior, looks like duck's foot cannabis. But if you can tell, this has no ridges or leaf edges, razor edging that the cannabis plant and the hops plant even would generally have. And so this webbing, and even furthermore, this cupping, is actually due to what we've been told is a cross between hops and cannabis. And that cross does make sense because cannabis and humulus are the only two plants in their family Cannabaceae. There are 11 genera of Cannabaceae that contains a total of 170 species. But only cannabis and hops are the only two plants in their family because they both descend from the same ancestor. And so, long story short, this gentleman in Europe, Cali, apparently was the first to successfully hybridize these plants and has been doing it since the late 1990s. And after writing about it in the Interpening book, his family gifted me 5 different varieties of these seeds. The plant I was trying to show on the other live was this one, because it's variegated, which means it's half yellow and half green. So, and that's not a trait of albinism. It's not albino. It's variegated. Its genetics are naturally causing it to be yellow and green. And so these plants just have a lot of interesting things going on with them. It also looks a little crazy up top here because I've dusted it with pollen recently. And again, I kind of toss these guys in the corner, so they're a little bit mited out. I can wash and clean them up and see if I can get some seeds from them. These are just like offshoots on the side. These aren't like my actual research plants. Those grow outdoors. They're big. They're currently hanging in the garage, and we're actually about to lab test them for their entire aromatic structure, which we're actually going to compare with the aroma structure of hops to help us put this puzzle together. We're also going to do genomics on them, all sorts of stuff.
So do you think the effects from that plant are going to differ considerably being crossed from hops, or like, is it going to be pretty similar to what you would expect from a normal cannabis spread plant?
I think it's important to go to like the reason why these plants were put together in the first place. And the reason, other than the fact that everyone has tried doing this like since the 70s, because the flower structures are so similar, you should be able to just cross them. And have you guys heard of the hop latent viroid that's like going around the industry like wildfire?
I have not, no.
There is a virus that jumped from hops into cannabis by some people here in the US who are trying to put the two together to come up with these profiles and these things, because it makes sense to do it in a variety of different ways. The hop latent viroid, it hides itself. It doesn't come out until the final hour. And millions of clones were cut and distributed around the US. And so this is infected and destroying grows in the millions of dollars across the US. So there's dangers to be had when you're playing, God and trying to put two things together. Make a lager out of weed beer. But trust me, it's like everybody's, dream, because who doesn't love weed beer?
Literally.
Yeah, I mean, I trademarked Cannabrew federally, I think in 2012, and I almost made an alcohol-free THC beer brewed with cannabis instead of starting the Trichome Institute, because I was so passionate about cannabis beers. I've been brewing cannabis beers since I was in college because they go so well together. They play really, really well together.
Does a cannabis beer lean more towards alcohol effects or cannabis effects?
Well, it depends on your level of wizardry. And again, what's your and so, you can generally, the heat process and water and all these other things that don't really work well for THC, you don't do it like that. And then from an industry perspective, is it even legal to sell anything related to alcohol in a dispo? Hell no, well, that's not going to happen. But is it legal to brew a beer and to have the beer be non-alcoholic, but to get drunk or I guess stoned from the THC that is homogeneous and suspended rightfully in its water base? And can you get stoned from drinking beer instead? Yeah, you can. And can you brew beers with weed buds? Yeah, you can. And does it taste awesome? Yeah, it does. But does it depend how that works? Yeah, it does. It depends. But like, man, I've been rummaging around the backyard and the garage with my hops and my weed plants again since I was in college. So like, this is kind of a big dream for me. So the fact that like I have possession of these plants is kind of a big deal. They're totally special. And right now, what we want to do is we really want to research them. We want to actually determine that these really are the crosses that people say that they are, because that's really important. A lot of people are like, well, like, so is it weed beer? And it's like, no, it's a cannabis plant that's also been crossed with hops. Why? For the same purpose as Australian bastard cannabis, which is to disguise a cannabis plant so that you could grow it, and Karen next door would be like, that's a weird looking bush, and you're like, yeah, and I'm gonna smoke it, and you're not gonna know, and it's totally cool, because this stuff was made in Europe in the 1990s when cannabis was still against the law everywhere around the world. So that was kind of the goal behind this. And now there's a lot of really interesting things that we can do with this, but I don't need to get into all the interesting things that you could do with these plants.
All right, you guys, the moment you've all been waiting for. We're going to move into the fan questions.
Like Max said, sit back, relax, what did I say? Trichome. Bro, this ketamine is kicking my ass right now.
Are you doing ketamine dabs?
I got my ketamine coffee cup right here. What was that?
Ketamine dabs live online with me, because I don't think that'd be appropriate.
All right, guys, let me try that again. Can you grow cannabis in a living soil from colonized substrate from psilocybin mushrooms and produce an alternate effect or enhanced effect when smoking the cannabis?
That man said psilocybin.
I think you meant to say psilocybin.
Jesus.
No, it's good. It's good. Yeah, you're good. You're good. It's a hard word. That's a hard word. Psilocybin. And the answer is, unfortunately, no. Cannabis is a bioaccumulator, and it is a bioremediator. That does not mean it's a sponge that automatically absorbs anything around its root system. It just does not work like that. I don't know if cannabis, the plant, even has an ability to eat the psilocybin, transmute it into its system and somehow put that into its trichomes, because I don't think it's a nutrient or a food or water. So I would say I don't think cannabis can absorb psilocybin and like grow weed that you could smoke and trip out. But that's a really trippy idea. So I appreciate it.
That's just like, I'll work on that.
It's like, we might do a research
I'll figure out how to do that.
What book can you recommend for someone trying to learn more about the entourage effect or terpenes of cannabis?
Terpenes, I wish I was more prepared for that one. My buddy Russ Hudson just came out with a cool book on cannabis terpenes called The Big Book of Terps. It's like this thick. And then, if you wanted a book on like why cannabis is not indica and sativa and what is it, what do you do about it, and like what's that process? Shameless plug. That's my book, Interpening. That's how we do that. But for the entourage effect, because I did read these questions before, I was prepared. I got this one off my shelf. I have dozens and dozens and dozens of cannabis books, all signed by their author. This one is really, truly the best for medical cannabis education, information. What is it? How does it work? Says who? Where's the science? Who backs it up? And then how do you make sense of something so complex in an easy way is in this book. This is written by my friend, Nishi Whitley. She's super awesome. She's out of Texas. And yeah, chronic relief. I would recommend this one.
One of the users, bro, I'm just
I got it.
in
Let me
my
ask this
head
one.
now.
I
Yeah,
knew,
go ahead.
Yeah.
I'm in front of the great Max, and I'm just
He's
fucking up on
scaring us
ketamine,
up.
and I just can't stop, man.
Is it actually worth saving Freakshow or unique plants even if they don't seem viable for production? I work in a small grow where we don't have the time or space to keep all of the cool ones off plants around.
Is the Freakshow worth keeping around? Have you seen this thing? This is the Freakshow.
What even is that?
This is a cannabis plant. I'm gonna break a leaf off to show it to you.
It's like a fern.
That's the structure. Sorry, my lighting is terrible. It looks more like a fern or like a baby tomato plant. And look at its flower. It's got a decent bud, especially for a plant I've abused and like grown in a tiny pot and have not treated very well. Yeah, I mean, I'm gonna grow this. I'm gonna smoke it, and it's awesome. This was made by a buddy of mine, Max, Dr. Freak, and his dad, um, Shapeshifter in California, I believe around 2017. And it's a really wild phenotype that just popped out. Crazy enough, though, this one actually popped out of my bag of seeds that I got from the guy who gave me the hop hybrids. This did not pop out of one of my bags of seeds from that Max gave me, Freakshow. So that's really interesting. Are these things worth keeping around? It's like, well, dude, if you're a small grow and you only have a certain level of a plant count, and your goal is to produce as much biomass as possible for the sake of profit, then these things aren't for that. I grow this stuff because when people come over to have dinner, I walk them in my backyard and I'm like, yo, you want to see something crazy? Check out the Freak Show. You want to smoke some of it? It's a novelty. It's fun. It's cool. These things are interesting. If you don't have the time or the space, don't do it. But don't worry. We got you, because guys like me, we love this stuff. We'll never stop growing weird ganja and pushing the edge and seeing how far these plants can go, because this is our passion. So yeah, they're totally worth keeping around.
What is your favorite strain, and is it Blue Dream?
You know, it's funny that when I left to go make dinner, she went into Blue Dream. I have a video on YouTube. I think you would search something like Blue Dream, Colorado's most counterfeit strain or genetic, something like that. And I'm pretty sure that's a Leaf Buyer episode where I went secret shopping in Denver, Colorado, and I bought 6 different types of Blue Dream in an hour. And I brought them all back to the office, and we aligned them up, and we analyzed the inflorescence, what they looked like, what they smell like, what they smoke like, all these things. And it was really interesting to show that even in the medical marijuana market of Colorado at the time, before they were even retail, that flowers pass lab testing that are covered in spider mites, that are totally unflushed, that are not ripe to even pick for harvesting yet, and even have mold in them, because the types of mold that we find are not the types of mold that mandated lab testing looks for. So that's an interesting video. But what that video proves is the strain name dilemma, and how Blue Dream is the king of the strain name dilemma. And so, is there a real and true cut of Blue Dream? Yes. I believe, guys like Kevin Jordy up in Humboldt, have always had the original cut and probably still do. But I don't do the strain name thing, because we do the very last sentence of my book says, "Hey Max, what's your favorite strain of weed?" And it says, "I don't believe in strains. I believe in interpening." So your cannabis is in a constant state of evolution. And so even when you breed your own cannabis and regenerate your own plants on your own property and grow them the way that you do, sometimes they don't always stay the same because of how much differentiation they can have. So I don't go by strain names. I go by effect types, and I use a whole different class of terminology, but we go over that in interpreting.
Max, this one's from me. What was your first experience with cannabis?
My first experience with weed, it was not a good one. I was way, way, way too young, and it was a really bad kid in the neighborhood that said he would, break my nose and punch me if I didn't hit the bowl like him and everyone else. And I mean, I was young. That was my very first experience with weed, and it was not a good one. It wasn't cool. It wasn't your classic one. But when I smoked weed for the first time with my friends and got high on my own terms, I think I was a freshman in high school. And no, definitely before that. I just remember being just it was one of the most amazing moments of my life because I realized that you can transcend different realities and you can play different psychological roles and understandings and have different tools to analyze the world with in different states of different consciousness. And that reality that you have in front of you um, is not always what you think it is, and that you can really observe it from a different perspective. And it really blew my mind. It really, I dedicated my life to psychedelics, sacred plant medicine, because of the magic realm that and the healing in the medicine that truly is there, and being dedicated to the fight that is against this stuff, to fight for it. That has to happen, and how you do that. And so, I had one of the most fun times of my life, just getting way too high, smoking White Widow out of a like plastic hookah in my parents' backyard when they were like away on vacation with like my buddies. We had a slumber party, and we just like, it was just ridiculous. We got way too high. It was really
I think this is a good way to transition into the next question we were going to ask, which is, what do you want to say to those people who had bad experiences with cannabis and decided that it's no longer for them? Because for someone to go from that first story, which is beyond bad than most, to then being an absolute king of knowledge of cannabis is just insane. What made, like, besides your friends, like, what would you say to those who are older and afraid to try it again?
When it comes to that bad experience that I had, was it the cannabis that did that to me?
No.
And so you have to compartmentalize every moment of reality for yourself. You know, that was a bad moment because of the person who decided to do bad things that I really didn't have, a lot of say in. But was that the cannabis? And is that a cannabis kind of thing? Like, does cannabis make people do those kinds of things? It's like, no, no. This guy is a shithead. This guy grew up without a dad who got murdered and who was a drug dealer and was growing up poor in a bad neighborhood and didn't have a whole lot going on. Right? That's what this was. And by the way, the first weed that I ever smoked was swag, was brick pack, Mexican cartel bud. Was not chronic. It was that fun to like learn that there was like brick, like, oh my God, there's weed that's green and crystally and doesn't have seeds in it. That was a revelation.
My question going off that and going back to the user questions, you mentioned that it was a very opening experience, that psychedelic realm that you could go to and heal for you. What does make a weed strain more psychedelic than others? What would be the explanation for something having a more psychedelic onset than something else?
That's a good question. It's a fantastic question. And I have actually a handful of really different, interesting things to say about this, and I'm going to try to cover them quick because I know I can rant. One, I've had two different employees at Trichome in our career. Some of the guys that work behind the scenes, who took one hit of some of the cannabis that we had, and were absolutely catapulted across the multiverse and literally transcended into a different state of consciousness, totally left this realm of reality and was having very extreme psychedelic experiences. Like what they were experiencing was extremely psychedelic. And those were people who had smoked, weed before, but for whatever reason, something got triggered, something launched them further. That is going to be more of the aroma structure, again, obviously combined with the THC, but there's got to be, it's probably some of the canosulfur compounds mixed with some really sharp terpenoids. You get a really potent dose of apinine, terpenoline, limonene, canosulfur compounds, the 6 varieties of them. You throw in some ketones and some other stuff in there, and you've got a low tolerance, and you rip it and you snap it super hard. You can get probably more than high. You can probably enter a state of psychedelica. So there is that, right? And I don't think it's strain specific. I think it's like, what flower are you working with right there and at that time. Another thing, I went to an event once where we did cannabis spiritually.
Mm-hmm.
We created a ceremony, and long story short, they asked me what my expectation of this was going to be, and I said not much, because I have an impeccable tolerance. I can barely get high just smoking weed, so taking a hit and doing a little prayer is not going to do much. And my experience was more intense than some DMT experiences I've had, and it was from cannabis alone, and even with a really high tolerance. And so the intention in which you set up the consumption of your cannabis can sometimes really make the experience quite different. And I don't know, I'm sure I could say a couple other things about cannabis and psychedelica, but cannabis for sure is an entheogen. You know, it is a sacred plant medicine that has been used for religious purposes for millennia, across the world and in many different religions. And so it's not just a healing herb that's good for XYZ, and it's not just a really clean, fun, safe thing to recreate. People really do find a lot of spirituality with cannabis, and that is very fair.
Man, sometimes I'm sitting here after you explain some of these things, and I'm really just trying to process and absorb them, and I honestly don't know what to say, because like your level of knowledge is up here and ours is so down here, and it's almost like I want to like be like, okay, so like what strain would you recommend that like commonly has these characteristics? But then we go back 10 minutes and we're explaining why we don't do strains, we do interpening. And it's like, you know.
What is your accessibility in the, and I have to say it, but the medical market?
Mm-hmm. No, you're right. You're 1000% right.
Of Florida.
Mm-hmm.
Just take the idea of medical away, because when it gets rec, experience the difference between a retail dispensary and a medical one, and you tell me what the difference is. Tell me what the difference is in the employees. Tell me what the difference is in the pricing. Tell me what the difference is in the product types. Tell me what the difference is in terms of how they're communicated to and explained to the patient.
You're saying it's not going to change that much? Or it would change drastically?
Identical. They're the same thing. Is cannabis medical? Yes. Can cannabis help people in a variety of different ways as medical products that they access from their medical marijuana dispensaries? Yes. Are medical marijuana dispensaries set up for that process? I don't really think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think if they required bud tending staff to do more than general sales education, but I mean, the level of education that a bud tender would have to do to be at a level of, truly what we're talking about is a pharmacist, because you're actually giving medical advice to a patient on how they should use these medicines for which reasons. And, I hate to shock you, but I've been saying for a very long time to the industry to not be surprised when medical marijuana becomes federally against the law, when cannabis becomes federally legal. Because at the point in time that happens, the FDA has got to do what the FDA is going to do and has already been working on, which is ensuring that anybody who isn't a licensed physician or pharmacist or nurse cannot be in any position to even hold something that is considered medical, let alone talk to somebody about it, let alone sell it to them. That would have to be shut down immediately. And so it's going to be a conversion, which is exactly what's happened in the West. And, before I even predicted this is exactly what happened in Washington, by the way. all of the medical dispensaries in one day just flipped, and all of the licenses that were medical just became retail, and nothing changed. And it was just a retail market. I say this not to like bum people out. I say this because I like to be really real about the cannabis plant, but also the cannabis industry. And I do think that there are logical solutions to that, because even if cannabis flips to being retail entirely, obviously there's still dispensaries, there's still grows, there's still these owners. You guys are still bud tenders. Like, it's not like the world falls out. It's not like don't freak out. But I don't think it would be fair for just the FDA to sell their version of medical marijuana, because that stuff is really going to suck. The dispensaries are actually going to have way better product than any of the doctors could ever offer. And that's true. But you have to be able to compartmentalize it. It's like, and compartmentalizing it by it being a strain name based on a THC percentage and conveying that it's one or the other, either indica or sativa. None of that works because of the strain name dilemma. The fact that THC is not going to tell you whether it's going to be a stimulant or a sedative. It's just going to tell you generally how potent this could be, but not really that much. There's a lot here, right? There's a lot there. There's a lot to be done. There's a lot that dispensaries can do. There's a lot bud tenders can do. There's a lot that the industry can do. So I never say those kinds of things to like scare people. I just hope people are prepared to, take cannabis as it is. But like in your medical market, how, which I don't know too much about, by the way, how fast are plants going from harvest to the dispensary shelves?
Oh my God.
Because if it's a 3-month process, and then depending on some of the regulatory stuff, but also some of the cultural practices for how you're managing the cannabis from point A to point B.
It's not good down here.
Time are you allowing for the aromatic chemistry, which really dictates the potency of the effect, but also dictates the direction of the effect? How much time are you giving those flowers to allow those compounds to dissipate? How accurate are those lab tests if you only test it, the second you harvest it, versus at the point of sale when it's actually available? And how much time is there, but how large is that delta?
I don't know if you're actually asking specifically. I couldn't give you a specific 100% answer, but down here, Max, these companies are putting weed in microwaves to drive them. We are that's not a joke. That's not a joke, Max. Max, we learned yesterday.
We've heard some terrible things, dude.
That they are radiating mold off of weed down here just enough to pass the inspections of the tests, and then it doesn't really kill all the microbes, and it just regrows, and they grind it into pre-rolls.
I've been investigating cannabis everywhere my whole life because, again, it's one of my biggest passions. I've got a bunch of others, lots of others. But like when I was in Canada doing lectures, before they went legal across all of good old Canada, when it was just a medical market, and I got to hang out with the patients, and I got to see the jars of flour, and I got to see the labels, and I got to see the lab tests, and I got to sit down. And I don't know if this was legal, probably isn't, to share your medicine, but I smoked a lot of the medical flower in Canada as I was checking this out. I'm like, why does all the weed in Canada suck so much? And why do I remember back in the day when I was a kid, BC Bud was the total chronic, like was the shit. And it's like, oh, BC Bud comes from hippies above the Emerald Triangle on the West Coast who are so passionate about producing the most gooey ganja that they're risking their lives for it. That's the good stuff. It's like, okay, got it. What's going on at the industry level? Oh, welcome to Canada, where we have medical regulations that say you damn near have to microwave the weed in dryers and all of this other stuff to be sure that the heat or the pressure or the evaporation, I don't know what it is that they do exactly, but it's some kind of method that they've agreed can be sure that there's no bacteria or mold on a medicinal product that they sell in herbal form to patients. And so what happens is, well, what affects the aroma structure of cannabis that gives you these effects, both the potency? Ludi, cut that out. Apparently, and I don't know if this is still the same, but in Canada, their method is to ensure that there are no bacteria or microbes on the cannabis that they sell to medical patients by somehow heating it up, putting it in some kind of an oven system, a dryer system, a heating system, a blowing system. I don't know if they use any types of radiation, but at the end of the day, what is going to affect the structure of trichomes, and simultaneously what's going to affect the aroma structure that is going to have the largest dictation in potency and effect type? Heat, light, time, and oxygen. So if you take flower and you blow hot air on it and all of this stuff, you're just going to dehydrate the waxy, resinous aspect of your glandular trichomes, which is going to allow them to crack open and allow the aroma compounds, which are in a constant state of evaporation, to leave quicker. So at the end of the day, I was experiencing flower from Canada. The reason why it all sucked is because none of it had an opportunity to express itself. None of the flower could show you how unique it was, or really what the individuality of the strain was. You couldn't even get an effect of up or down. Smoking their weed was like hitting a THC vape pen that has no other chemistry in it to be a stimulant or a sedative. It's just THC that moves you forward. And so the youngness and the freshness and the aroma structure of your cannabis is some of the biggest impact. And so, I don't know, how long does it take for your flower to go from the grow to your dispensaries? And so, like where I live in Oregon, you can grow weed and you can grow it in your house or outside or whatever. And, that's like California, Colorado, Virginia, even. My business partner grows weed legally, big, huge plants in a neighborhood in Virginia. So like the way that I ensure the most rich or the freshest cannabis that's the most unique and the most interesting for myself is I just grow my own plants.
Max, what are your thoughts on CHS? And this is another big word for me. Cannabinoid
hyperemesis?
Yes, sir. Syndrome. Long-term effects due to use of concentrates?
Yeah, well, there's a good question there, because I always suspected that this has to be a concentrate thing, and this has to be a dabbing thing, because growing up when it was nothing but brownies and flour, maybe some bubble hash here and there. There was never this thing like hyperemesis. So like, why all of a sudden in the cannabis market, now that things are legal, is this a thing all of a sudden? And you have to investigate, well, what's different? And what's different is when we were growing up, there was no such thing as concentrates, only hash. Hash is simply the removal of trichome matter from the cannabis plant and collected. That's hash. It's just removing the resin from the plant material in a collection. That's hash. That's hashish. That's been done for thousands of years, and there's a lot of different ways you can do that. And the concentrate is concentrated, and that concentration is generally done from an extraction method and a variety of other solvents that are used to do that concentrating. And so they are also extracting resin from the plant, but it's in a concentrating way, and that's going to produce a concentrate. So when we were growing up, we never had concentrates. We only had ash. You'd think like, oh, I think hyperemesis is coming from concentrates, especially because we never had dabbing either. So it's got to be dabbing too. And then looking into it myself, I've talked to plenty of people who say that they began experiencing issues with that from just smoking a ton of flower, right? And so that's interesting. At the end of the day, I suspect there is some weird product, like a antimicrobial spray that is produced by some company and it's imported by Germany or Thailand or Peru, and they get some weird chemistry, chemical from China or Japan that is a part of this mixture that goes into this thing that is then either fed to these cannabis plants or sprayed on them. And then in some people's genetic makeup, they're genetically allergic to some micro fragment of chemistry that they're consuming because their body is having such an abrupt reaction. Like they are trying to get whatever's in their system out, like violently so. Ask any OG who's been smoking pot at every single concert that ever happened in his backyard, 200 of them a year, eating brownies, dropping acid his whole life, is he's ever even heard of hyperemesis syndrome. It's like, what is that? No, like we've been fine forever. Go down to Jamaica and ask the dudes who have dreads dragging on the floor as they're, smoking their ganja, if anyone in their community has experienced this. I bet you they'd say no. Right? Like there's something weird that is causing this. And I don't know if it's just in the flower. I don't know if it's just in the concentrate, but to me, this is just a personal suspicion. I suspect there's gotta be some weird chemical that's giving people an allergic reaction.
So you do not think it's a naturally occurring thing?
Well, a lot of people think it relates to just potency. Like they're like, weed has gotten so much more potent over the last couple of years. And because of that, we've never seen. So I guess you answered it, but that's not what you're saying it is.
I got another one for you that's really similar and super interesting and kind of scary. I used to not believe some people who are testifying against cannabis when we were in the House or the Senate or wherever, doing legislation, that when they were saying that cannabis was causing people to become psychotic. And I'm like, dude, no, like I'm the cannabis researcher who's here to say there is no way that I'm going to let you and your reefer madness get away with trying to make people believe that if you smoke a joint, you're going to turn into the devil and become psychotic. And they're like, actually, yeah, that is going to happen. And we have evidence of it. And I was like, yeah, let me see that evidence. And they said, okay, here you go. Be my guest. And I went through a bunch of hospital records at Denver General Hospital right there in downtown Denver on all of the cases of psychotic episodes that were only due to cannabis. And there's a huge list of them. And I looked into this, and what was the one and only outlier that was consistent across the board with all of these people, including the fact that the vast majority of them were people who have been using cannabis daily. Like this was not a new thing for them, right? What was the one outlier? The difference was it was edibles.
Oh.
Holy shit, that's crazy.
Do you boys know what the difference is between ingesting cannabis through your liver versus your lungs, your nose, your ears, your eyes, your skin, or up your butt?
It's a completely different psychedelic compound, and it's much more potent.
Yes. And do you know how this works?
For those who don't, you should explain it.
I couldn't explain it as well as you, as always. So
but
I'll make it quick and easy. You guys know THC is not water soluble. That's why you always cook it into a fat or an alcohol if you're making a tincture or a food. You and I, we are completely made out of water, and we bypass water in liquids and solids. So when you digest something that's not water soluble, your liver metabolizes it, which is a conversion process for you to be able to digest it. The metabolite of delta 9 THC, right? THC that's already active, once it passes through your liver, becomes molecularly different by turning into 11-hydroxy THC. If you put 11-hydroxy THC next to delta 9 THC, they look really similar. They're just not the same. And the difference between lysergic acid amide and lysergic acid diethylamide, let me tell you, there's quite a difference there. These things matter. And so what happens is now you've read a label that says there's this much delta 9 THC in the food. Great. What does that mean when this person with this individual makeup, based on how much food they already have in their systems, eats that quantity and then converts the delta 9 into their system, that becomes an entirely different drug, 11-hydroxy THC, which can become 2 to 6 times more potent and last 2 to 6 times longer. Also, its pharmacokinetic pharmacology uptake is very different, meaning when you smoke weed, you hit it, you go high, and then you come down. 11-hydroxy THC, you get up, and then you come down, and then you get up, you come down, and then you're up, and you're like, thank God this is over. It's like, nope, not yet. And then you go there. That's the difference. That's why the brownie scenarios happen. That's why this like crazy things happen. Apparently, 11-hydroxy THC, it's so different and it's so potent that at certain levels in certain people who are predisposed to psychosis, it can trigger it. And so if you eat a large enough of an edible, you actually could turn into the devil. Yeah. And apparently this has happened. This is important stuff though. Like, I mean, we're laughing about it because in a way it's funny because we've all had a horrible edible experience in our lives that we've all survived from because it's just weed. But also some really messed up stuff has happened from people doing things that didn't end up too well. And it's because of psychosis and it's because of edibles. So it's really important for bud tenders out there as you're recommending product to people to explain to people how and why edibles treat you so differently and why going slow does not necessarily mean taking as little as 10 milligrams. If you have zero tolerance to cannabis, 10 milligrams could turn into 60 milligrams, right? It's 11-hydroxy. Try taking 1 or 2 milligrams. If you have zero tolerance, zero experience, what is going to harm you if you take too little versus what's going to harm you if you take too much?
100.
Like, that's really good bud tender advice to give to any patient, right? That's kind of what we teach in our other courses. Like Trichome Institute has way more than just interpening courses. We actually teach phenomenal bud tender courses, extraction classes, cooking courses, all sorts of awesome stuff. And we do like package deals all the time. We do giveaways all the time. We do coupons all the time. So we've got lots of cool education that actually teaches people this stuff formally.
This is a question that I've actually always wondered too, and I'm gonna ask it. What explains Farnesene as the dominant terpene on a cultivar with over 30% of the total terpenes in some batches, while other times the levels are too low to quantify even though they are from the same facility? Is Farnesene a dead giveaway that a plant was specifically stressed by a pest infestation, or are there other stigmas that can be utilized to trigger a ramp in Farnesene production?
Honestly, I don't know anything about that. I've never looked into that. I've never studied that, but I don't think that's what's going on. I think there's something much simpler. Because did you hear what that question said? It said, why are we getting a 30% ratio on this really uncommon terpene, and then other times we're getting such a low reading on it that we're not getting it at all? I can tell you what I think's going on there. If you're using gas chromatography, GC, it doesn't matter what you're using. Your instrument is probably confused. And that makes a lot of sense because these are very sensitive things that are literally trying to detect invisible microscopic vibrating chemistry and separate them from each other. And so it's not uncommon for some coding in the software that tells the computer that farnesene, whatever that terpene was that they said, reads this way. And then for whatever reason, there's actually an alcohol that's inside the cannabis that you're not even looking for. And for whatever reason, that alcohol is tricking the software, making it think, oh, there's a shitload of farnesene in here right now. And then you run it again, it's like, there's none in here. It's like, that's a computer thing.
So basically, just never trust lab reports ever. Okay, cool.
Basically, the little bit of background on that question, just to give it some Florida-specific background. Cookies here in Florida, all of their lab reports, they like to, it's a big thing to have high terpene percents here in Florida. That's kind of the next fad that's moved on from high THC percent. Educated smokers think that high terpenes just to equate to more aromatic, better bud. And so cookies here in Florida.
You guys are gonna laugh. Watch this video 5 years from now.
Yeah.
The terpenes will be so old. Like, you guys are talking about terps.
Yeah.
What's up with your can of sulfur ratios? the hot shit then. Trust me, it's always going to be something new. But anyway, sorry, go ahead.
So yeah, basically people are just asking, because Cookies has a bunch of dominant Farnesene or whatever it is.
There's a few
terpenes.
dispensaries doing it.
Yeah, just specifically on Reddit, that's what they're referring to.
Yeah.
Basically, they just feel like because across many of their different strains, they're mostly dominant in this terpene. There was something that someone posted that's alluded to saying that it is because they're stressed out from a specific type of bug, and because all of these plants have that, they're thinking that there's something wrong with their grow, an infestation of some sort.
Yeah, but there's a methodology for intellectualism, and it's not complex.
Yeah.
Okay, put everything that you just said on the whiteboard, and then put an action plan to it. You think a theory. Great. You have the theory that says there's this ratio of this terpene because of insects. Great. And you went to the grow and you discovered there was insects there? Did you? Were there bugs? Yes, there were. Great. What kind were they? They were this kind. Awesome. They were whitefly. Great. Let's take that strain and let's grow it covered in whitefly. And then let's grow another one with no whitefly. And let's just send it to the lab and see what the result is. And if you have a consistency in your theory because you proved it to be true, it's called science. Stop guessing. Just stop being like, oh, I think it's this, and that's why I'm going to put my thought on Reddit. It's like,
yeah.
Welcome to stoned people sharing their ideas with each other about on the internet on what's going down. And it's like, you could do that and you can spend time reading all of that stuff, but like I literally just don't have time for people's opinions on like that kind of stuff. It's like, if there's an interest there, cool. And there's an intellectual approach and you can put an action plan to it and figure it out. Tell me about that. I'll be interested because it sounds like you got something interesting going on. But if people are just guessing about why things are 30% or 0%, I'm like, I don't know. Like, no, just come to me with more information.
Is there a way to measure how much resin is inside a trichome head while it's still on the plant? Not how big the head is, but how much resin it contains?
What do you mean by resin?
It was not clarified.
To me, resin is trichome matter, right? Because if you're going to pull the resin off of a cannabis plant, what material do you have? What's resinous is trichomes. And, if you rub your trichomes down, you just pat a living plant with your bare hands and you get really sticky, and then you slap your hands together and then you roll your hands together, and it's just a brown black ball, temple ball, that's loaded with cannabinoids, terpenes, all your aromatic chemistry. That's actually some of the most intense and most potent and unique way to consume cannabis, and it's ancient temple ball. So is there a way to measure how much what is in your trichome head, how much THC and how much terpenes, and how oily, which terpenes are contributing to the oil aspect or ratio? I think what they're trying to ask is like, I don't know. I think the better way to look at it is looking at trichome density, trichome ripeness, and trichome health. Because if your trichomes are healthy, they're ripe, and they're really dense, then what you're going to get is a larger resinous profile off of those plants versus the opposite.
Perfect.
Okay, cool.
And our last question here for you, Max. We got some love all the way out from Germany. Hello, Max. Lots of greetings from Germany. Will there be more courses in the future on Trichome Institute? And how can one attend the meetings seen in the trailer of one of those available? I hope you're doing fine and can help me with my question.
This is a constant question. We have not made any formal release or explanation of how and why what was supposed to be the second level of interpening that we've been telling people is coming out isn't going to be what we wanted it to be or expected it to be for so many different reasons. But one of the biggest reasons is actually accessibility for people. And so for that course to be in person and for people to have to come to a certain state or a certain country, these are courses that begin to get into the thousands of dollars. And so we've actually been trying to strategize if there are legitimate methods to continue interpening education in an online platform type way. And so that's one reason why we actually came up with the cannabis aroma kit. And so these are not just like a set of terpenes where you smell and like try to memorize the terpene. It's not that. We have crystallized terpenes in here that help you feel different parts of the trigeminal nerve so that you can feel this experience as you're learning interpening methodology wherever you are around the world, including what the different terpenes do smell like in ratios that are strain specific, all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so at this point, what we have been working on behind the scenes is producing a really detailed, more in-depth version of what interpening already is. Because if you go through the sections where we tell you about each and every qualitative part of cannabis that you need to analyze and assess and how you do that, it's very, very basic. It's super basic. And what we've been building behind the scenes is making that extremely specific. Mm-hmm. And so on a scale of measurement that you can learn and even be tested on so that we can certify that you can actually evaluate and grade cannabis for its quality, its potency, and its psychotropic direction, regardless of what a strain name is, how it comes to you, just totally blind, kind of like a real cannabis sommelier. And so that has been our focus, as well as all of our other university projects and some of our other projects behind the scenes. And so we're not just doing cannabis education, but we definitely still are. That's what we're known for, and that's what we're offering to the public at this time. But we're also heavily invested in a lot of research for other projects and other purposes simultaneously. So yes, we are coming out with more courses. We are coming out with more information, and it is to further interpening methodology. And that might include some apps and some stuff that you can play with, and for people to start grading cannabis that they buy at different dispensaries and uploading to, something kind of like a Reddit board, but would be based off of a legitimacy, like some kind of spectrum of these people are talking about, these people are certified, these people are the peanut gallery, something kind of like that.
I think that this is a good way for him to transition into, I know that you've basically explained it throughout this podcast, but just what is Trichome Institute? Where can the people find it if they want to learn more and just go there?
Yeah, I mean, it's super easy. trichomeinstitute.com. If you want to check out our courses, we have one big button called courses, and you can actually watch parts and pieces of our different courses totally for free. So if you want to see like the beginning of interpening or like the middle of it and see like, is this really quality information? Am I learning anything? Is this a different approach? You can really kind of try it before you buy it. And we have lots of fun, like cool toys. By toys, I mean, educational tools, but the things like the weed wheel, and the interpening loop, the aroma kit, the interpening book, jeweler's loops, all sorts of stuff. And we'll hopefully be coming out with some other cool, fun educational products as well. One thing I'd love to bring back is the hash and concentrate wheel.
I love how you have a wheel for everything, bro. It's awesome.
Seen this before?
No, that's so sick.
But hash oil was extracted with this type of extraction method and has this much potency, consistency, purity, color. We've got wax, shatter, live resin, rosin, distillate, keef, bubble, just like
wow,
yeah, just cool, fun cannabis education stuff. But yeah, we would also love to start getting into helping dispensaries more than just educating staff. And we have like awesome staff education programs and deals and that kind of stuff. But yeah, dispensaries that want to work with us on rearranging their menus to offer cannabis in ways that are different from the rest of the industry, that also aren't from the old school black market ways, but are kind of moving towards the new cool, new school ways of looking at cannabis, and want to kind of get ahead of that. We're available for that kind of stuff as well.
Awesome, man.
And that will all be linked. Max, I honestly think we could do a 4-hour podcast with you if we had the chance, but I know you are a busy guy. So unless there's anything else you wanted to say or shout out, I think that is going to conclude tonight's episode.
One thing I'd like to say that was pretty surprising is how much love I got from so many strangers from the dumpster fire video. Because like every day I wake up and I turn on my Instagram, whether it's the Trichome feed or my feed or some other feed, including a lot of high-level OGs in the industry, some friends of mine that I've known in this business for like over 10 years. Just the amount of people that kind of came out of the woodwork and showed their support and for me and for that crazy experience was really great. I really appreciate that. So I'd say thanks to anybody who shared some love and some support, because that was crazy, and you guys are totally awesome for doing the review that you did, because that was beyond entertaining. That was better than a movie.
Thank you so much, bro.
People, I'm like, roll a blunt, make some popcorn, get a beer, but like get yourself set up, like get comfortable, because you're gonna watch.
Bro, thank you so much for the kind words, and thank you so much again for coming on.
Thank you guys for that, and thanks again for the opportunity to share some knowledge and some information and to answer some questions. And if you wanted to do a check-in in the future, like 6 months down the road,
dude, please,
100%, bro.
Absolutely.
Let me know.
Let's do it.
Right on. So yeah, so thanks so much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much, bro. Again, bro, have a great rest of your night.
I will. I'm gonna go make dinner.
Bro, what a great way to end it. Bro, thank you so much again.
Right on. Bye, guys.
All right, man.
Bye,
Have
bro.
a good night. All right, you guys. That was the legendary Max podcast. We're definitely going to do that again. That was so much fun, dude.
Dude, I could have sat there and picked his brain for another 2 hours. There are questions I didn't get to for sure that I wish we had. You guys, thank you so much for your support. Everyone, like he said at the end there, who came out of the woodworks and showed support for us. This has been huge for us. This has been huge for our channel. All the new subscribers, we love you. Every week, we're going to be putting out more and more content that is just absolutely pushing the boundaries every day. And I don't have much else to say, bro. Stay couch locked, everyone.
We love you.